So now, to make sure you have the case in front of you, I'm going to ask you now to take your markers, your highlighters, and go to your case, and over the next few minutes, highlight for yourself what disturbs you, what are feelings and what are facts, and take notes on what's missing. What disturbs you, what are feelings and what are facts, and take notes on what's missing. So you might underline something once. You could use another code for double lining, underlining. You could circle something. You can develop your own codes for or colors for what you're doing. I'm going to ask you to park your personal history, if you have any, with any of these topics for now. Because the first thing we have to do in an ethics situation is not bring our history to it, is to take it for what it is. It's somebody else's story and somebody else's life. So we want to hear what's going on for them. Who has underlined or circled or a comment about the first sentence? Karen Cooper.
That's just a fact.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
Does anyone dispute, does anyone have any issues with the first sentence? Not really. Okay. And the next sentence. Yes, Deborah Rich.
This is devastating news for both of us. I said that was a feeling.
Mm-hmm. It's a feeling. And Alan Levy.
It's also something that's missing because we're missing the wife's perspective.
Right.
Exactly.
He's speaking for her.
Right.
Exactly. So that makes me leery, right? When somebody is speaking for someone else, it's not a complete case. It's not a sufficient case. So that's important. Thank you both. Any other comments about this line?
I had a reaction that it was disturbing to me.
It was disturbing to you. And what does your, so I'm going to ask you to take note of that, because when something's disturbing, it's our soul saying to us, heads up, because it's either about you, that there's information about the couple that's coming to you, and it's either information about him or them or about yourself. Does that sound right? David Gillis?
Yeah, no, I just like to add that it could be both of those, not or, but.
Yeah, it could be and or, right.
Right.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Correct. So I'm going to add, Leni, when you say it's disturbing to you, do you have a sense of what it is, why it's disturbing?
Well, when I read the first sentence about being a woman being pregnant, we think of that being a happy occasion. And to hear that it was devastating, when I saw the word devastating, something clicked off for me.
Okay. So your projection is that when people hear they're pregnant, it's a good thing.
Yeah, I guess it's a projection, but I think that's often true, though, also, that it's often the case.
Right. So when we have to examine our perspectives, and I'm really glad you shared that. It's very helpful. We have to examine what we believe about other people. In bioethics, we don't want to catch ourselves in the future using the phrase, it's often the case that for other people, because we're here for these people. And so we can't judge them. It's not our job to judge them. It's our job to hear them, notice our reactions, and then put our reactions up on the altar of consciousness, so to speak. So if I notice I'm judging someone according to a standard or a belief I might hold, I have to notice myself doing that, or our friends in the group. That's why a committee is a good thing, or a group of people, because we'll notice for each other and we'll catch each other's shadows, and we'll put our judgments up on the shelf of consciousness next to it and return in a more neutral place about something. You okay, Leni?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you, dear. Okay, I'm going to mute you. Does anyone else want to say anything about this sentence? Bina.
Well, I just want to clarify something. If this were being presented to the Bioethics Committee, let's say, it's disturbing from the get-go because it's one person's voice. This is not a case of he and his wife. This is a case of the husband's perspective of their dilemma or the bioethical dilemma. Is that right? So we are looking at it strictly from that voice.
We're looking at it from that, right now we're looking at that voice, and we're looking for what's missing. Not just, no, I'm not primarily concerned about what a bioethics committee would think.
Right.
We're really going to be focusing on how does this play out in the couple, right?
Well, the disturbing part is there's no couple here. It's
Right.
the husband's voice.
Right, exactly. And often that's he might be talking to his mother. He might be talking to his brother. He might be talking to the chaplain at the hospital. He might be talking to, but this is how it gets presented. This is how it comes in first. And in fact, in Atlantic Magazine, this is how they chose to present it. This is a case from Atlantic Magazine.
Okay, interesting.
So keep bringing up questions, keep talking. This class is all about supporting each other to get it all, to learn, to grow, to explore. Okay. And Barbara.
He tells us that this is devastating news for both of them, but he never tells us, and I know it's his voice, did they discuss, beside the career, what was really devastating in a deeper way? And we really don't know what he says it's the career, but we really don't know what devastating means to her. We know what it means to him. Devastating is hanging out there.
That's very important and critical to notice. Okay, good. Let's pause at, we have a 17-month-old daughter.
Yeah, okay.
Really, phrases are as important to sentences. What is this, how does this, did anyone underline or circle this?
No, I didn't.
Yes, Deborah Rich.
Well, we have a 17-month-old daughter is a fact.
It's a fact, good.
That part I underlined is a fact.
That's an important fact. Anything else about this fact? Judith Carell, go ahead.
They planned on only having one child.
Right.
That was the decision they both had made, according to him.
So according to him, they planned on having one child, and we know that they have a child of, and I want you to be present to everything in the case. So imagine yourself with a 17-month-old child, okay? So understand, see this couple with their first child, a 17-month-old child. Be careful to see the facts, to visualize them a little bit even. Shelley, yes.
Part of it is fact and part of it is opinion. We have a 17-month-old daughter is a fact.
Right.
And we planned on having only one child. When he's saying, and we planned, that's strictly his opinion. We don't know how the wife planned.
That's really important. Thank you, Shelley. When somebody says we, I don't know if any of you ever committed to something with a partner and your interior sense about that commitment migrates as things happen to you, or your thinking changes, or, you know, a lot of people on this call are probably in your mind revisiting your wills because of what's going on in our world. You know, that may not have been discussed with anybody yet. There's what sounds true at one moment is not always true at the next moment. So keep remembering you're hearing one voice. Shelley, that's very helpful. Thank you. Other hands.
The second part of it is maybe his opinion, as Shelley said, but also the word plan suggests what you're saying. What can happen, things can happen, that it's his view.
Right. A plan and a reality, right? Are such different things. We're old enough that wisdom is all too true, that life, you know, there's a saying, people plan and God laughs, or shit happens, pardon my non-rabbinic language, right? Or life happens, depending on where you sit in this case, you know, where everybody's going to have a different, but for him, this is less the plan, you know, he's more on the darn side than the thrilled side. Alan Levy.
Yeah. I double underlined we have a 17-month-old daughter. So the fact that it is a fact that they have a 17-month-old daughter, but what's missing there is how they function with that 17-month-old daughter. You know, he uses the term later about co-parenting, but what, you know, we really don't know, is he an absentee father? Is he, you know, a full participant? And so there's a lot missing in the statement of we have a 17-month-old daughter.
Right. So if I was with this couple, I would say to him, tell me, how's that going? What's your daughter like? What's her name? Show me a picture. Talk to me about her. How's it been these 17 months? How was the birth? Was it an easy birth? Was it a difficult birth? I'd be collecting data, yeah? Thank you, Alan. That's great. Okay, and Heather. Okay, so let's go to the actual next sentence, which is the birth control. Okay, whose hand is up? I know, go ahead.
Joanne?
Nicole.
First of all, so the sentence is the birth control we had been using failed. So there's stuff missing there. And I would want to know what birth control they were using that failed.
Okay.
It's a fact if they, but it's not unless I get more information.
Okay. So from his point of view, the birth control they were using failed. Is that fair enough?
No, because I don't know what he means by birth control.
Oh, good point.
It may be a fact for him, but if he just pulled out, I don't know what he did. Right. I don't know I don't know. It's not enough.
Okay, good. So the birth control failed. I like the way you put that a lot, Randy. Thank you very much. Okay. And who else has a hand up? Barbara Bergman.
Birth control failed. Whose responsibility? Where did the responsibility for birth control rest? With the wife, with the husband? And was the method they were using agreed upon as a comfortable and useful method? What discussion did they have?
Because when we're walking somebody through something, we may not want to put it that way in the first debrief moments. We might be using some empathy there, but in our case analysis, what you're both saying is we want to draw him out on what happened, because it can happen again, so that this the style of this, the attitude here, has some room for exploration. The attitude is very intense in this, and if we're thinking physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually, we're exploring the different parameters, including responsibility. Thank you, Barbara. He doesn't say the birth control I used failed. He says the birth control failed, and it's a really good nuance, an important point in this case. Thank you. Actual next sentence, which is, okay, I tried to have a vasectomy, and that should be 9 months ago, and my wife objected at the doctor's office without citing a reason. Okay, hands? Erica.
Well, it sounds like they didn't really discuss it much ahead of time, because it wasn't until they were at the doctor's office, which I'm assuming was when he had the appointment to actually have the vasectomy, and then she said, no, let's not go. But we don't really know. Was this a doctor's appointment to discuss it, or was this a doctor's appointment where he was actually scheduled to have the vasectomy, and at the last minute she changed her mind and said, no, I don't want to do this? So we don't know enough about this.
Okay, what do other people want to add more or ask more about this one? Anybody? Jane.
Well, I think just even in the first couple sentences, we saw a glaring lack of communication between the two people, you know, which sort of intensifies as the description goes along. But I mean, it doesn't really make any sense. I think Erica maybe was saying it doesn't make any sense for them not to have communicated about this being so important.
Good.
And it just brings up the whole dynamic of their relationship. Like a lot of unspokenness.
Thank you. Bina, and then Alan.
It's also the first glimpse we really get of her, possibly her ambivalence around having a child. And there's a shock value that maybe they did have some agreement. There's a shock value of, oh, she's refusing my vasectomy. She's saying she'll get an IUD. That's not happening in the moment. But it's our first glimpse of her voice, I think, and in terms of the ambivalence of her feelings.
Mm-hmm. Good, mm-hmm. Very good. And Alan, I'm just gonna go ahead.
Actually, yet again, I think we're totally missing her voice. Even the statement about my wife objected without citing her reason, we have no idea if that's the case. We have no idea if the husband just doesn't want to hear the reason, and she's been saying it for a year about what her objection is. So, you know, yet again, we're missing her perspective and left with his take that, you know, she, you know, shows up at the doctor's office, you know, and out of the blue, you know, seemingly objects.
Yeah, on my fridge, Barry knows what we're teaching, and he put up a card he found in a gift shop that says, it's one member of a couple saying to the other, I haven't been listening for our entire marriage. Would you please repeat what you've been saying? Okay. Who else wants to say something? Anybody on the phone?
It's been said.
Okay. Karen Lynn Cooper. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, it's Lynn. Karen's my
Lynn.
middle name.
Sorry, Lynn.
Yeah. So there's a hint in this that he takes responsibility for nothing. That it sounds like they have a fair amount of different opinions about this. I'm guessing that they have not talked about it certainly enough to come to any kind of joint decision making. And I tried to have a vasectomy, but my wife objected without citing her reason. It doesn't sound like they used any birth control from then on, and that he's not blaming anyone but her. He's certainly not taking responsibility for any of this.
Okay. So we don't know. We don't know about. Be careful. We don't know.
We don't.
We don't know. So I would say that's more projection than the facts provide us with.
Fair enough.
Be careful there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right. So now let's go to the next sentence. She said she would get an IUD instead, but she was unable to get the IUD because doctors had to remove a fibroid first. Judith Carell.
Okay, it says here that she was going to go get an IUD, so she is taking responsibility for birth control. You don't know the second part until you read it that she couldn't get it. But at that point, either, he said you have to do something. We don't really know what he said, but she was now taking responsibility for the birth control with that saying that she would go for the IUD. Did she go through with it? Even if she didn't have the fibroid, we don't know. We don't know a lot of things that came after. The only thing we do know in reading the next sentence that she was already—
Stay put, don't move ahead.
She was, and I just got the feeling that he was the controlling partner in that marriage.
Okay, I noticed that's a feeling. It's not a fact. It's a feeling. Okay. So I want Randy Frankel and then Barbara.
So it sounds like from reading this, she was unable to get the IUD, and there is a baby. So there was no IUD and there was no vasectomy. So what's missing is what were they using for birth control? What discussion did they have about that during the time that there was nothing?
Right, because he is saying the birth control failed.
Right.
They were using, in their minds, they're using something, or in reality, they're using something, and it failed. Thank you, Randy. Barbara.
It's interesting that they're bargaining with each other. She said, she said, don't get a vasectomy. I don't want you to. I'll get a IUD. There seems to be bargaining in this relationship. I haven't heard a lot of discussion, like what would be our alternatives? Well, I'm offering you a bargain. I want you not to, so this is what I'll do. Kind of a power. It's a power bargaining game.
We don't know if it's bargaining. I think it's an interesting question. Is there bargaining? I would say, is there bargaining?
Yeah, this sounds like bargaining to me. I don't want you to do that, but I'll do this. That sounds like a bargain. I don't want you to do that. Don't buy ketchup, but you can buy mustard.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Who else has this, David?
Yeah, one of the things that's, I guess, missing to me in this is what his wife knows at the time that that she says no to the possibility of a vasectomy. The way this is written, it's not clear whether she knew at the time that she couldn't have an IUD because the fibroid had to be dealt with or not. Mm-hmm. And if she knew about it, then it sounds kind of, there's a different feel to it than if she didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Erica?
A vasectomy is relatively permanent, whereas an IUD is temporary. So for the wife to not want the husband to have a vasectomy and rather use an IUD tells me that she was ambivalent and she wasn't ready to absolutely say, I don't want to ever have a child again.
Thank you. Or, okay, thank you. Shelley?
Yeah, his statement, I tried to get it, but that's a very weak statement. You know, I just feel that's his opinion. I don't consider that a fact. Not when I tried. That I just, I mean, and then the wife came and said, no, there's something, it's all opinion, the whole sentence, the way I see it.
Thank you. Anybody on the phone wanting to speak up? You're unmuted. Okay, any more hands on this line? Any more hands? Okay. I do want to point out that since we all grew up into eldering, that it has become not always, but often possible to reverse a vasectomy. And there are problems with IUDs, including sometimes causing infertility. So they're both challenging choices, even to this day. And we just need to know that in either case, it's challenging to step forward. And I know someone just the other day that I worked with who has had her IUD reimplanted 3 times because of infections. And so then this is not the time when you'd want to be dealing with that. So all of these things would have more nuances even around those kind of topics. But, you know, if we're in the family and listening, we're listening for what's going on here. How do I be with you? How do I be with you, right? So now we're going to go ahead to the next sentence, which is, she first learned about the pregnancy at the doctor's office during a consult on removing the fibroid. Notice that it doesn't say we. So what do we know from this sentence? Barbara?
Well, she must have missed her period, at which point she might have said to her husband, no, I missed my period. I wonder if, but she didn't acknowledge. I wonder about the intimacy of the relationship. She missed her period, but she found out she was pregnant at the doctor's office. A little sketchy.
Well, she might not have missed. They can find out before you miss your period whether you're pregnant.
That's technology I don't know about.
Yeah. Nowadays, they can get you very quickly. They can find out if, and they're not going to do surgery without finding out if you're pregnant.
Wow. All right.
Else, yes, Barbara Murphy.
Yes, I found this sentence just extremely disturbing because it just felt like it didn't add up to me. I don't even think you could get pregnant when you had fibroids. So it's starting to sound like the sequence of, oh, she couldn't get the IUD, oh, she had fibroids, now she's pregnant. Sounds like I just have a lot of questions about how that could all be.
Okay, you can definitely get pregnant when you have fibroids. There's no question about that. Those
it makes it a lot harder, I thought.
Those follicles are budding in addition to having fibroids. So,
okay.
Yeah, that's not a problem. And fibroids are not a contraindication to being pregnant. Fibroids can be very large. Erica.
So she learned about the pregnancy at the doctor's office, so that implies to me that he wasn't there with her. So it's not we learned about it, but she learned about it. So sounds like she went with him to have the vasectomy, but he didn't go with her for the consult about removing the fibroid.
That's the point I've been waiting for. Discuss that with someone. I would say, what's going on, you know, because going to find out if you're going to have surgery, some of us would want our partner with us, some of us wouldn't. Depends on how well behaved our partner is and in a doctor's office, and how supportive they're able to be if something's potentially scary for them, because they might, you know, there's something could have been sent off for a biopsy. We don't know what all the information she might be getting when she goes to the doctor's office.
Well, I
Erica.
just want to mention that I know 2 women who had hysterectomies because of their fibroids. So it can be a major surgery.
That's right. It can be a very major surgery, or they might have eggs harvested and a hysterectomy. But we do know that some kind of surgery comes with these fibroids. Anybody else? Since hearing the news, I have been honest with her about my feelings. Anything missing?
Well, it raises the question of whether he was honest about his feelings prior to that.
Quite an admission there and an awareness. And what else do you notice there? There's another important point.
Well, and of course, what you might expect to follow, has she been honest with him about her feelings? There's no mention, once again. You know, it's not she, and she's been honest with me about her feelings. That never gets included.
Great. So that's not included. And what else isn't included? Bina.
His concern for her condition, his concern about the fibroids. So what's going on with her?
Excellent.
It's gone. It's not there.
Deborah Rich.
Well, he said, I've been honest with her about my feelings, but we don't know what the feelings are.
And we might be saying, if I was his grandmother and he's talking to me, I might be saying, and how does she feel about the fibroids and the surgery and you know, tell me about what's going on with her.
Even his use of the word honest should be open to question. Even if we just refer to the first paragraph, there's already enough evidence about his honesty to be called into question. So even his use of the word, I've been honest, we should take at, not take at face value.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I don't know about should, but something's, you know, that he's implying he hasn't been honest in the past. You know, this is a troubled relationship, and it's going to take longer than one discussion for any family member to walk him down this path and help him make some healthy choices and understand himself and be even curious about understanding her. Let's go to the next sentence. I reminded her that we simply cannot afford a second child. Randy?
Oh, if he meant that to be a feeling, but that's a negative projection of an outcome, and it is not an expression of feeling, and there is no proof in the rest of this letter that that's something, there's not enough facts there. But it's not a feeling.
Okay, so you're noticing it's not a feeling. And it's something he believes to be a fact.
I thought he thought it was a feeling.
What do you base it on?
Because it follows, I've been honest with her about my feelings. I reminded her, you know, to me it sounds like that is a demonstration of what he thinks a feeling is.
Ah, okay, thanks, Randy. And then Erica.
What does he mean by afford? What would the sacrifices be if they had a second? Kissing my career goodbye doesn't really do it. What does afford really mean to that? And what do they both believe not afford means? And I don't hear any discussion or definition or Any of what does can't afford mean?
And Erica?
I want to respond to the fact that it says, I reminded her, because that implies to me that this is something that he's been trying to remind her about before, or that he's told her before that they can't afford a second child. So I'm wondering, you know, when they've discussed it before, or if they've discussed it before, maybe she said she wanted another child and he said, no, we can't afford it. So he's reminding her about it.
Excellent. And who else has a hand up or wants to speak? I have a question to you. How many members are there of this family? And is there anyone else who is impacted by the decision not to have a child or finances?
The child that they have, who's 17 months old, I believe, will be impacted by their decision too, in the sense that that child will be either an only child or have a brother or sister. And so in that way, that child is impacted by their decision.
So that's really important. Notice how we didn't get to that for a long time. Just sit with that for a minute. And what are some of the implications of whether a child has a sibling? Hands. Erica?
Well, one implication in terms of the future might be whether the family could afford to send 2 children to college or just 1 child.
Okay. And other implications? Hands? Bina?
Well, I would also wonder if he has siblings, or if he is an only child, or he has some feelings about having other children in their family, apart from financial concerns.
Fabulous. Thank you. And more hands? Lynn?
Well, when years pass and they get old, you know, having one child to take care of aging parents is a lot harder than having, you know, 2 of them.
Don't we know it? Okay, and Barbara?
Well, what's the size of the extended family? Would an only child have support mechanisms outside, or would a sibling be an important support mechanism to an only child? What's the larger family configuration, and what might this child need, the one that's born or the one that's 17 months? Would a sibling be a positive addition to her life?
Yeah, what does this child need? And are there grandparents?
Yeah.
Live
with them?
Would having another grandchild matter to them? Do they think this family can't handle another grandchild? What would they say? There's a lot of sides to every story. Thank you. All right, so let's go to the next one. And we can kiss our joint career aspirations goodbye if we have another baby. Okay, Judith.
He's more concerned with his career than with his wife, with his daughter. He is only, it sounds money is a very big, important life to him. And another child will disrupt everything. But we don't know what the wife is saying. The wife is maybe saying, I accept this, this is what's happening. We will manage, we can do it. But he is totally turned off from all of that.
That's one way, that's a projection, but he is for sure saying, what? What is he for sure saying, guys? Hands? Joel?
I would say on a certain level, the expression is over the top. We can kiss our joint career obligations goodbye. Okay? The fact is that, you know, I'm concerned about that, but the extremity of his expression seems well beyond what's going on.
Thank you, Joel. So we can, let's look at the exact words. We can kiss our joint career aspirations goodbye if we have another baby. Hands? David Gillis?
I think that is the biggest emotional expression in this whole case. That we have insight into what he is really afraid of, and I respect him for saying that, and for. However, he does not really know, and again, this gets back to an initial point that was raised, whether that is really so either for himself or for his wife. This is a hypothetical a guess that he has that it will ruin them. And he has a very strong feeling about that for himself. We don't know, again, whether it's so important to his wife, either that his career not be ruined or that hers not be ruined. How important that is ultimately balanced against having another child.
Thank you. And Bina left, and then we'll go back to you, Joel.
I'm wondering about the joint career aspirations. I'm wondering if they work together or what their careers are. I'm not sure how tied up they are with each other in terms of that aspect. I'm just curious about that. I mean, this is a big projection on his part that his life will go up in flames and etc. But what exactly are we talking about?
Alan Levy?
Yeah. So in that sentence, all we have is his feelings. What we know for a fact, so we have no information on their financial circumstances. So the statement about we simply cannot afford it is a projection, his feeling. We have no idea what his financial circumstances are. People can afford a second child under all sorts of income statuses. And what we know for a fact is that there are many people, probably a lot of people on this call, who've had joint careers with more than one children. So factually, we know that it is possible to do it. So all we have in his statement are feelings, projections, nervousness, anxiety.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, Joel, I promised to come back to you. Go ahead, and then Lynn.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about the fact that, and this is 2 sentences later, but he talks about a reminder of my career sacrifice. So there's some real uncertainty as to what he's really talking about here.
Right, so let's stay put on where we are. Let's not jump ahead. Okay, Lynn?
So the way he says this implies to me that their teamwork is very problematic, that they're not functioning as a team. They're not saying, okay, we have this problem. How can we solve this together? Is there a way? What are our options together? He's like, I think he's making some assumptions and that he's all alone in figuring this out and not really involving her as a full team member.
Thank you. The next sentence, that what we're seeing is catastrophizing. There's a word for this. This is called catastrophizing. This is a relatively young man who is catastrophizing. Something has happened and he's in the throes of an extreme reaction to it and to anything other than belief that the catastrophe that he foresees. And it really takes a while to walk with somebody, walk with them as they express themselves without saying, it's not true, you don't know what you're talking about, you haven't thought this through. First, we have to let them get it out. No matter who they are in our family and what the stakes may be for us. If he was my son and it was my future grandkid, I might have a lot that's on the table for me, not just for him. Because he's part of a family system. And that system, I might say, who knows what I would say, but I might say, look, if I could come to help you, I would. That I can send you some money to help with a nanny. Later in the conversation, I might say, let's look at your supports and where some of the assumptions maybe we can look at them in this discussion, where I can help move him into a bigger picture reflection. And in the beginning, we have to let and validate him and let him get his stuff out there on the table before we go to the next step in the family of looking at the assumptions and asking, where does this belief come from? Because we've all, most of us have had jobs, given up jobs. Now, I gave up being the rabbi at the 92nd Street. Why? So that I could take care of both of my parents while they were dying. And that was my dream career job. But my family came first, right? That's the big Jewish community center in New York City. It was a real shock. A young person doesn't necessarily have a perspective that there's hills and valleys and choices, and that at his age, it's not necessarily all about him. He's 32, she's 31, something like that. I mean, I could look it up exactly, but it was, young enough not to have that much life experience at what the journey feels like, and the surprises and the turns and the doors that open that you couldn't imagine. Or when you have a second kid, if he's worried because he's doing an MBA, which could be, it may be paying for his education he's worried about. He may not know that more support might be available to him when his financial circumstances change. There's a lot going on that we don't know where this person's full understanding of their own circumstances are. Barbara, she agrees with me. We already know that we're not sure we believe him. Moreover, I said our marriage will be over in the sense that we will be just co-parents rather than lovers, because I will resent her. Barbara.
Well, it sounded like this relationship is hormone driven. Sex seems to be a big thing with them, and lovers are going to be all over. That's a pretty strong statement about kind of a really weak marriage or relationship. Sex is great, but it's not the whole story.
Bina.
Threatening. It doesn't sound like a choice at all. It's a threat.
It does sound like a threat. I'll resent you forever. Well,
You're stuck when somebody says that to you. It's shocking as a wife to hear something like that.
Yeah, it feels like a betrayal.
A betrayal, yes.
Betrayal. Something's really wrong.
Mm.
And it is meant to be controlling. It's meant to be a power play. This is it. Unless you do what I'm asking, this is it.
And the baby will always be a reminder of my career sacrifice and our indebtedness. Erica?
So they went from joint career aspirations to his career sacrifice.
Right. This person is hysterical by the time he gets to this point in the letter. He's gone from even that we have a joint something. Now he's like, and not only that, me. This is a very hysterical person who I think is very afraid now. If we get out of our projections and we go to this, if he's only got an 18-month-old, that's hard work. 18 months. That's like, you don't have any free time if you don't have a nanny. You don't have time to think. I'm glad they have time to make love. Good for them. It's like having that little kid walking around the house. This is someone who's terrified that another 2 years of this is coming in and they're going to be behind their peers forever, maybe. That's my projection. Okay, let's go to the next sentence. Although I've been clear that I don't want another baby, I told her this is ultimately her decision. I will support her in whatever she decides. I would reflect it back to him and sit with it. And I would reflect it back again and see and say, is this true for you in your body, mind, and spirit? Even though I was denied the right and choice to do with my body as I pleased when I wanted a vasectomy. Okay, I'm going to open it up for you to react to this.
He was denied her approval of that, but he could have at any point on his own gone and had a vasectomy. So people do that, and without their wives knowing or without the agreement of their wives. And so again, I see this as an example of a feeling that he is not in control of his life around some decisions that are very important, not only for himself, but for the story of his family.
Right.
And that's where he's coming from.
That's where he's, okay. Anybody else want to react to that line? Lynn.
He's portraying himself as a bit of a victim. And I think trying to maybe justify in his own mind some of the hard time he would plan to give her.
Okay, and let's look at the next sentence. We're both Christians, and I know she will struggle with making the decision I prefer and might regret it afterward. So he's actually thinking about her here. Notice that?
Mm-hmm.
It took a lot of sentences. It took the whole letter, but he's actually thinking that this ethic is a serious ethical dilemma for her. And let's continue. I don't think I will share those regrets, but if she keeps the pregnancy, I will into a lifelong depression and feel stuck in an unhappy marriage. Okay, I'm going to open up the mic. Who wants to be this guy's grandparent? Raise your hand. Who wants to? He's just said, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be unhappy in my marriage and in my life and depressed in my life. Anybody else? Anybody who hasn't been talking? Okay, Barbara?
How can you really be sure? Have you thought about your feelings might change? I mean, have you thought about the size of the statement that you just made? Can you kind of dial it back? And it's a pretty big sentence. I'm going to be thought about what it means to say I'll be depressed all my life. I just ask him, have you thought about what you're thinking or saying?
Okay, anybody else want to raise their hand with a last chance? Joel, was that your hand?
Yeah, I think we're all at an age where we look at this somewhat differently than when we're 31 or 32. And that when you're 31 and 32, you're sure you're going to be depressed for the rest of your life. And I guess one of our functions is to tell our grandchildren that you won't.
Thank you, Joel. And Lynn, real quick. Whoops. Lynn?
It's a perfect example of the catastrophizing you described before. This is the worst possible scenario, and helping him look at other options.
Right. Instead of I probably wouldn't start talking about my own life or experience, but I might say, I'm going to invite you to give me 3 other ways that this story could go. And I'm going to say the story and then give me 3 other possible outcomes. Right? I'm going to continue to try to support him to find his way without labeling or naming what he's doing. But I might say, look, you're very upset right now. So I want us to take some time to look at other ways that this scenario could go and to lay out with me some of the ways, the financial piece, the emotional piece. Let's look at different ways things can go, because there's always more that's possible in life than we can ever imagine when we first think, oh my God, this is a total catastrophe. So, if I got really desperate, I might point out, a grandparent who lost my grandparents who lost both of their children in the Holocaust and had more children later. You know, like there's all kinds of, they might need to remember that stories have all kinds of steps along the way, and you can use family stories. But first, I would try and help them have their own awareness emerge. I'd ask them to remember a time that was very, very loving with their wife and what was special, and to give me a few of those very special times. I would help them build the other side before going into problem solving probably. You know, we want a process. And over the course of this course, we will get to process. So I don't want to hold you any longer. I want to bless you with good health. May all your grandchildren have perfect lives. And